hybrid connectivity is very important. Then the question is, when you come to hybrid connectivity, right now, satellite uses a different protocol than terrestrial. If you are using 3GP, 5G, then satellite is using UHF or L band, S band. There's no standardization. So industry has to move to standardization.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the IoT For All podcast presented by IoT For All, the #1 publication and resource for the Internet of Things. I'm your host, Ryan Chacon. On today's episode, we have two fantastic guests. We have Oscar Delgado, the IoT Sales and Business Development Director of HEAD AEROSPACE, and Raghu Das, from ANIARA Spacecom. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a lot about space, connectivity, satellites, kind of what does the current satellite landscape look like? What's an overview of the market? What does small sat mean? Like, what do small satellites mean? What's, why are they a good option for IoT connectivity, IoT solutions? Talk about satellite narrowband, talk about SATCOM versus Sat IoT, if those are terms you've heard, kind of comparing them together, the future of satellite IoT. But needless to say, we're going to cover a ton of topics related to the satellite IoT space I think you'll get a lot of value out of. But before we get into it, any of you out there are looking to enter the fast-growing and profitable IoT market, but don't know where to start? Check out our sponsor, Leverage. Leverage's IoT solutions development platform provides everything you need to create turnkey IoT products that you can white label and resell under your own brand. To learn more, go to iotchangeseverything.com. That's iotchangeseverything.com. And without further ado, please enjoy this episode of the IoT For All podcast. Well, welcome, gentlemen, to the IoT For All podcast. Thanks for being here this week.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great to have both of you. Let's kick this off by doing a quick introduction about yourself and the company for me. Oscar, let's start with you, and then we can pass over to Raghu.
Yes, hi. Well, my name is Oscar Delgado. I'm the sales and business developer for the IoT area for HEAD AEROSPACE. And exactly, at this moment, HEAD AEROSPACE is a privately owned space company with headquarters in Beijing. Okay.
Fantastic. Raghu?
Yeah, my name is Raghu Das. I represent today ANIARA Spacecom, based in Washington, D.C. area. ANIARA does provide communication services and also strategic and operational support to space companies in the world. In addition to ANIARA, I also have a small investment venture fund called E2MC that we invest on early to seed stage investment in the space companies only. And so I have 20 plus year in satellite industry. I had done few startup, one in geo constellation, one is LEO constellation, and successfully exited. And I am right now a strategic advisor to HEAD AEROSPACE.
All right, fantastic. Thank you both for kind of that introduction. What I wanted to do was start off just kind of at a high level for our audience, talk a little bit about the current satellite landscape, the current satellite IoT market, kind of give a quick overview from your perspective. What does the landscape in the market currently look like? And Oscar, let's start with you, and then we can throw it over to Raghu.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, exactly related for the HEAD AEROSPACE, we are expecting to growing with a IoT constellation for 48 satellites in the coming 2.5 years. Currently, we have around 8 satellites that complete totally services for some types of the specific market. Okay, this is our planning launching.
Fantastic. Raghu, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the satellite IoT is nothing new. Okay, IoT in 20 years ago used to be known as M2M, machine to machine. Mm-hmm. There are billions of dollars being spent building satellite constellation that can provide that kind of machine to machine communications. Right. Starting with the Iridium, Global Star, Inmarsat, and ICO, and many others. But I think there is a twist in the place. I think because those companies that was providing this, very expensive satellite constellation was basically the pricing for the end user used to be higher. But the new space has invented itself to have a smaller CubeSat satellite. There are at least what I know, a dozen of new satellite companies that has come up in last 3 to 5 years, and HEAD AEROSPACE Skywalker constellation is one of them. Many people come from many directions. So I think IoT business market wise, if you look at in 2021, it's around $1 billion market satellite IoT business. So it's not a big business in the terrestrial market, but it is still a significant portion of the general space market and SATCOM
Yeah,
market.
absolutely. I think it's becoming more significant day by day for a lot of industries, especially the IoT space as well. So,
Right.
it's a very exciting space. But let me ask, from when you talk to other people and organizations, are there any kind of common misconceptions that they have when you're talking about satellite IoT, or are there any kind of like challenges that maybe they push back on talking about the usability or the functionality of what satellite IoT is basically promising and saying that it's going to provide value to the industry?
Yes, that's exactly. You are totally correct. And many people normally they don't believe or they don't know that it's possible to use a low-cost satellite for the IoT at this moment. Exactly as Raghu commented in the past, very interesting solution the last 20 years, but unfortunately were expensive. Okay, very expensive for a specific high value assets. But now we are in the new wave for a massive this type of connectivity. What do you believe, Raghu, about this?
Yeah, I think general there is a acceptance at the same time, little bit of apprehension that
Mm,
the cost that new space is providing is possible or not, and I think there's many challenges a customer face today, because how do we connect so many small sensors,
mm,
and how to aggregate them? So there is apprehension, and but there is at the same time also they think there is a big market. We when we come across the field and user, we talks about like 1,000 and 10,000 devices to be connected.
mm.
So the volume is there,
Yeah.
for the price point.
Absolutely. And one thing I've heard mention is this kind of concept called small satellite concept or for IoT. Can you just, for our audience's sake, explain exactly what it means when we're talking about small satellites um as it relates to the industry?
I can go ahead with that. I think the small satellite, when you talk about, they're talking about CubeSat. CubeSat, which just started up maybe 5 years ago as a university project, and this becomes standardized over a time. And then you also have now SpaceX sort of came in and provided the launch, access very affordably now. So as a result, the small satellite industry has taken up. So it is all CubeSat launched on SpaceX or a similar launch vehicle at a very affordable cost. So
Right.
that provide the entire capital needed for a constellation reduction by a factor of
Mm.
maybe 50, or we don't know, because a iridium constellation could have cost you maybe billion or so, where a constellation on the CubeSat could cost you maybe 100 million or so. So
Right.
at least factor
Yeah.
of 10.
Absolutely. And Oscar, let me ask you this question, and Ray, you can jump in afterwards as well. There's a couple different terms that have been thrown out in conversations that I've had. So we have satellite IoT, and then we have SATCOM. SATCOM, I feel like is something that kind of gets mixed in. Can you talk about what the difference is and kind of the uses and values of each, and kind of how we should be thinking about them as from a
Yeah.
terminology standpoint?
Yes, absolutely. When you have the SATCOM, you are talking specific for communication, internet or private networking with a big bandwidth. When you are talking with SAT IoT, you are using small bandwidth for a small volume of data, normally message. So this is totally different. Many people don't believe that it's possible to transmit information without the internet. Of course, yet. Okay, of course, yet. So depending the type of needs for the industrial devices, industrial sensor that Raghu commented, you need to use a SATCOM or SAT IoT. Depends. This is the big difference, the volume of data.
Absolutely. Yeah, Raghu, anything to add there?
I think that's correct. I think satellite IoT is part of the SATCOM as a broad umbrella. But when people talk about SATCOM, they're talking about VSAT, where you can basically do a 1 megabit to 10 megabits of in gigabits of data. So that is the difference. Is one is more reliable, other one is maybe short data burst
Right.
application instead of continuity application. There's many differences between the traditional SATCOM and satellite IoT, but
Yeah.
one of them is basically narrow band, IoT and a more I will not call it broadband, but more wider band
Well,
in SATCOM. So
can you elaborate a little bit on the satellite narrowband concept, kind of what that is, and kind of the how people should be thinking about the how it's applicable?
yeah, so I think satellite narrowband basically talking about few bytes of data
Okay.
collecting the sensors and sent out when the satellites in over the sky. It's
Okay.
not a continuous communication. It is a short data burst. So that means all the sensor data is accumulated at one point, and those when satellites flying over the sky, you just
Right.
basically send it out. So
Right.
that's a very simple and very effective communication, and also it can be very cheap and affordable, and that's what Skywalker constellation is trying to do.
Okay, makes sense. Oscar, let me ask you this: when we're thinking about the satellite IoT space, what are which markets do you think are going to benefit the most from satellite IoT scaling? And then on the other side of that, or I guess connected to that, what use cases do you feel like are going to be leading the way, or have we already seen traction with when it comes to satellite IoT deployments?
Yeah, great question. Well, in fact, we are addressing where we have a very big volumes of sensor. Okay,
Hmm.
so if you open the market boxes, you can find something, for example, in the agribusiness, the agriculture sector, with many type of sensors in the land. And for example, for the utilities, water companies, electricity company,
Right.
for example, how many of rural power measuring electricity meters do we have in some countries? Thousands, and some countries of millions. And looking for the agribusiness, how many of land sensor, temperature sensor, weather sensor, humidity sensors that we have? Millions. So that's the market with a high, very big potential
Sure.
in a short time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Raghu, anything from your perspective that you see as a kind of tag on to that as far as,
Yeah,
where are we going to see the most value initially?
so that's correct. I mean, right? So we humans are trying to basically get everything smart grid, smart
Right.
agriculture, smart water resources, climate, carbon sequestration. So there are many applications we can think about. The question is what information can collect it, but what you can do with that information to
Mm.
basically give back and do better. If agriculture, for example, if you can do the soil moisture or the phosphorus and acidity, then we can basically now tell the farmer what fertilizer they should use, when to harvest. Then that is a big contribution to the agriculture. So what we're talking about IoT basically enable that smartness in every industry.
Yeah.
It's not only agriculture, animal tracking,
Right.
meter reading, there's many
Right.
applications,
Now,
endless.
when a company is kind of exploring options when it comes to connectivity for a solution, what makes a use case more ideal and a good fit for satellite IoT? And then at the same time, what things maybe don't make it as good of a fit, like from a requirement standpoint for a solution to be successful? Like, how should people be thinking about how satellite either does or does not potentially fit with what they're trying to build as a connectivity option?
I can try that. I think, see, if you look at, I think preferred choice for anybody for connectivity is terrestrial. Okay.
Okay.
And terrestrial today covers only 15 to 20% of the entire Earth. Okay.
Right.
And now the humanity is looking at the resources, using any resource and every resources that globally available. Okay. So you are talking about like 80% of the land mass is not reachable by terrestrial. So satellite definitely play a role. Okay. And so the second thing is the cost. So the asset that you are trying to monitor, or the resource that you are trying to monitor, is it worth spending how much money? It comes
Yeah,
down to
sure.
that for a user. So for example, if you have to basically have a shipping line or logistic supply, it's no brainer that IoT is necessary. Satellite IoT is much more, because it's going across the world. So but when
Yeah.
you come to agriculture or maybe other things, the people are questionable because the adaptation is a little slow, because
Mm,
they don't see the value unless a one season or two season they can figure out, okay, really it is adding value. So
Yeah.
so there is that mentality among the customers.
Yes, just to
And
complement,
yeah,
exactly. Sorry, it's totally correct. The view, and just to complement Raghu comment, it's very important in IoT project. The IoT solution is not only the technical solution. You need to have the business case to support the technical part. This is the most important things. Many people are forgetting that each IoT project you need to have the business case
yeah.
to make viable, to make sense the project. Okay. This is the key success factor.
Yeah, I agree. I think regardless of the technology that's involved, the business case and making sure that that exists, there's
Absolutely.
buy-in. There's buy-in from those in the organization that are going to make the decision, and that you can then see the ROI, and that kind of ties back in because obviously the connectivity has a cost, so the cost plays into the ROI to justify getting these projects to scale. Basically, seeing that success early, and if you don't have that kind of alignment with the ROI, the internal stakeholders as well as the business case, then that doesn't matter how good of a solution it could be. It's just not going to go anywhere. But the demand, I feel like, is going to continue to grow for satellite, especially because bringing connectivity to rural areas and solutions that require that. So you mentioned kind of agricultural use cases. There's supply chain asset tracking where things are going to be moving through areas with less connectivity and finding a way to ensure visibility across the entire spectrum. So it's a very interesting space. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you prior to us wrapping up today is, given where we are now, where do you see kind of the future of IoT? Let's look at it like in the next 12 months and then beyond that. What does that kind of look like? What should we be excited about? What stands out to you all? And Oscar, let's start with you, and then Raghu, you can follow it up.
Yeah, absolutely. The IoT market, specifically the satellite market, will be consolidated. You
Yeah,
can you can hear many things about new startup, new another company, many companies. Some of them will succeed, but more of them will be fail. So at
sure.
the end of the day, we have many potential options. But let's wait maybe 2 years or 3 years. Many things will change it. But absolutely, we are in the middle of revolution, Ryan. What do you
Yeah,
believe, Raghu?
I think for me, the two perspective. One is, I think satellite cannot exist alone. It has to come up with a hybrid solution. So you
hmm,
have to basically, we are implementing a network in Oscar. Oscar is implementing where is a hybrid solution. So we have to basically, because after all, terrestrial is pretty much there everywhere. Almost everywhere the humans reach, and there's remote areas we cannot reach. So the hybrid connectivity is very important. Then when the question is, when it comes to hybrid connectivity, right now satellite uses a different protocol than terrestrial. If you
sure.
are using 3GP, 5G, then satellite is using UHF or L band, S band. There's no standardization. So industry has to move to standardization so that the ground chipset has to be corrected. For example, Apple now is saying, well, they can do direct to devices on L band. Then Starlink is saying they are going to also provide direct to device solutions. So everybody's sort of working towards a very different solution. But what I believe the future would hold into standardization of the devices. So I think the 3GPP on could basically embracing the satellite could be the big thing, and there are people actually moving on that direction.
Do you think standardization is going to be one of the biggest factors to kind of helping increase growth in this space and adoption?
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely, because
Absolutely,
because
absolutely.
standardization basically makes the ground. Because if you want to basically charge a $20 for a device, you
Right.
really have to bring the standardization. So that is the issue. We have to basically make the same standardization that the phone companies today. If we are like 20 companies before, now only two companies predominantly, Android or Apple,
Yeah.
right? So you
Right.
have to bring in standardization, and I think 3GPP is doing, the cellular company standard. They're doing a great job basically bringing satellite into the play so that you
Yeah.
can interoperate between terrestrial as well as satellite. That should be the 5 years down the drain.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
fantastic insights. Last thing I want to ask. So if I'm listening to this as a member of our audience and looking to explore further about the fit of satellite IoT into a potential solution I either have developed or am developing, what's the best advice you have for them to how to kind of go about considering how to make the right decision on satellite IoT being a fit or not?
As a customer or a
As
user or a
as a
user?
sorry, yeah, as a company looking to adopt a solution and
Yes.
basically evaluating different connectivity options, what should be the main drivers for whether this is the right thing or not?
Yeah, you have to saying what percentage of your devices or assets
Hmm.
are in the remote area and no connectivity.
Okay.
So that would be actually the first point where you want to see, okay, look, I'm 20% of my assets are in the field, in the mining, or in the meter reading, or the
Yeah.
the gas pipeline. I'm not able to basically monitor those things. The second thing comes into picture is how much is going to cost. So what we are doing in Skywalker, and basically our costs are unimaginable, very low cost. Okay,
Yeah.
and I
Right.
think we can make sure any business case that has at least 20% of their assets outside of their outside of their cellular coverage. I think we can provide a solution that could basically help them adopt very quickly.
Hmm. Oscar, anything to
Exactly.
add there?
Yeah. And it's totally key to the customer or the user define what are the business indicator they need. What is the
Right.
real information they need? Because many people forget and try to send many of information, and at the end of the day, they use less than 1% of the information. So this is
Yeah.
key to define the correct technology.
Sure.
Okay, this is extremely important.
I absolutely agree. I think there's so many different pieces that play into an IoT solution, and making
Yeah,
sure that each component is optimized for your solution. Otherwise, you incur different costs. You have different experience from a usability standpoint, connection standpoint, you name it, and that all those things contribute to success or not in those early stages, which help you get to kind of scale and success, which is where we all want the projects to get to. Last thing before we finish here today, and I'll let you all go. For our audience who wants to learn more about this topic, wants to maybe follow up with questions, dive into kind of what HEAD Aerospace is doing, what's the best way they can reach out, learn more, kind of connect further?
I think they can contact Oscar. Oscar can leave the email. I think we
Okay.
can put that
yeah.
in your podcast.
Yep. Yep.
And I think that's the best way to reach us. From HEAD Aerospace. And
Yeah.
if somebody wants more consulting work, they can use my email and reach out. So I'm happy to help them
Perfect.
build a business case. So
Great. Well, both of you, thank you so much, Oscar, Raghu, for taking the time. Very popular
Thank you,
topic
Ryan.
these days, and it was fantastic to have you both on to share your insights. Very similar, but also coming from different angles. I know from the consulting side, from
yeah.
the HEAD Aerospace side. But I think the commonality here is that it's a very big and it's a big and exciting space to be in, and to pay attention
Absolutely.
to for the industry. Lots of potential here. We still have a ways to go, it seems like. The consolidation side, the standardization side, like you mentioned. But we're starting to see more and more adoption. And I think once we do that and we see successes to kind of roll across the board, we're going to start to see that adoption even skyrocket further. So thank you all for taking the time, and appreciate your insights. And our audience, I think, is going to really enjoy this one.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Ryan.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for watching that episode of the IoT For All podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please click the thumbs up button, subscribe to our channel, and be sure to hit the bell notification so you get the latest episodes as soon as they become available. Other than that, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.